Welcome to the Art She Manages, the podcast dedicated to remarkable women in arts and cultural management. I'm Alma, your host. Today, I have the honor of speaking with a true powerhouse of the performing arts sector, Ilona Schmiel, the Chief Executive Officer of the Tonhalle Zürich. This isn't just an interview, it is a masterclass in leadership, from the nuances of high-stakes negotiation to the reality of work-life balance at the highest level. If you want to know what it takes to lead at the top, keep listening. Mrs. Schmiel, this is my absolute honor to greet you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's also my great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I mean, your career is really incredible, is very inspiring. So let's start with your academic path. You were one of the first to study cultural management in Berlin right after the Berlin Wall fell. And I've heard so many, cultural managers say that this job is all about learning by doing, and that the university could hardly prepare you for it. What is your take on it? How important is the formal education, especially if you are aiming at leadership positions?
Thank you for asking me that question, because this was always something I was really trying to find out. How much is studying a subject like cultural management or media management very helpful? I must say the most helpful things are that you meet people who are teaching you in a certain subject, who are normally having a huge expertise in what they have done before. And so if you have people in the cultural management business who are actually having a leading position, then this helps a lot to bring you in and to learn from their perspectives. And the other thing is that you have the chance to really build up a huge network of people, not only the ones who are teaching you, but also the other ones with whom you're learning together. And I think the most important thing nowadays is to have a network with whom you could exchange your ideas, with whom you could be in touch for also critical points to discuss before you are, as a leading figure, are maybe giving an interview or dealing with some aspects. So it's always depending on which level you are talking with whom. And I would say the time was very, very interesting for me, helpful, and has a certain very special value to get to know people from many different cultural positions, to get to know them in that period. Also, when you just said it, it was right after the wall went down. So we had people from the eastern part in Germany and from the western part in Germany. And we have 50% from the east, 50% from the west, 50% were studying. The others, they had a position and tried to adapt and to accommodate in a system of cultural management between different mentalities as well, between different history and mentalities. And I think for having a very good exchange, studying at a university, also a subject of cultural management, is something which is really helpful. But I must say, you should not start with cultural management without having another background. It could be only someone on top, just studying management and thinking, oh, I can also do it with some cultural advices, with some cultural subjects. It doesn't mean anything. I would say if you're a musician, if you're someone who are interested in arts anyway, but you must have first something where you're educated in a certain subject, then you can do it on top. I think this is for me, very essential to point that out.
Amazing, thank you very much. And now that you've been a guest lecturer for music and media management yourself, so I guess these are the most important things you try to teach your students, right?
Yes. So for me, this is something which I try always to point out and to give my experience to young people, or anyway, to people. It's not a question of age, but very often to people who are right at the start of taking over very high positions. And this, I think, makes no difference. And there's not a limit. You can start at the age of 30, you can start at the age of 45 and even later. So the question is, if you are willing to take over responsibility, to be and become a leader, this means that you have to have a certain way of how you find your own position.
Thank you very much for sharing it. I'm very interested in your very first professional steps. So, how millionaires say that the very first million was the hardest to make. So let's talk about your first million, your first job in the cultural management sector. What were the biggest challenges you encountered? And was there a specific moment when you, just like understood and thought that I would like to lead teams and projects myself?
I think it was not the case in the first cultural management job which I had. It started before. It started between the age of, let's say, 13 and 15, where I had this feeling that for me something is very essential, working in a team. But anyway, I made very often the experience that I had immediately to lead the team. So it was a very personal experience in a certain way, finding out what is something which is easy for you, so-called easy, even if you have not really the idea what it means in reality a little bit later on, being a leader, being a person who's taking over full responsibility for everything what she or he is doing. But for me, it was something which I really experienced during my school time. And during my school time, I got also a huge support from the director of that school in the age of 14, when I was sent to a certain training and seminar of rhetoric. So I was sent to a political seminar for getting a training as a speaker. And this helped me a lot at a young age to find out, is this something which is more easy for me in comparison to other people, or is it something which is really only hard work and you have for the whole time of your life a certain effect that you think, no, it's not the right position for me. So for me, this was obviously easy, and there was someone behind, like my director in the school, who just said, this might be between everything what you want to do in your future a very helpful way to find out if this is, let's say, something which you are not only interested in, but which you can rely on, that you have this ability and you train it. Of course, you train it. It's like rehearsing, like a musician. You train it. The more you're doing it, you are having your own training, but you need also critical feedback. And I got that, relatively speaking, at an early age.
This is absolutely impressive that you figured out such an important part of leadership, such as public speaking, at such a young age. And now I would love to talk about something you are known for, audience development. You have mentioned feeling a distance when you first got to the Tonhalle, that you felt a bit lost in your own audience. So you started personally meeting with people to get their feedback, which seems quite unusual for an executive director. How important was it for you, the executive, to be the one showing up for your audience in that personal way?
I think the most important thing nowadays is to be very personal and to be very open and transparent, and to try to understand with whom are you talking, for whom are you working, who are the people in the audience, what are they thinking. And you need to know immediately, of course, you can convince them because you learned to convince, but it doesn't help if you are a sender and there's someone who gets a message. But if this message is not reaching out in the way you want to be perceived, then you have a problem. So you have to be very open and to make corrections in the way how you talk, how you try to reach people, and to open them up that you get a real feedback, a feedback with which you can work on, and a feedback of people whom you can rely on. Because at the beginning, it's always a question, whom do you meet, why, in which situation, and what is the purpose you want to reach out in that meeting. And I think the first thing at the beginning is that you have to listen to people. When you arrive in a new position in a new city, listen to the people, let them talk. And of course, you have your vision. But in the same moment, you have to find out, does it need some corrections? Does it need a little bit another way of understanding? Do you need another timeline, for example? Or are you too pushy, maybe too fast? Or are you way back, not pushy enough? So in between all these possibilities to find answers for your own way, you have to be very careful and to see what is realistic and what not. And so this was at the beginning, when you have this feeling you're new, you're coming completely new into another form of society. You make your own experiences, and you need, of course, advice from colleagues. You need advice from your team with whom you are working, but also from the people who are in the audience, and maybe giving you feedback where you feel, oh, this is something I have to deal with it. It's a strong feedback, or it's something which you are really thinking about it. Or sometimes you feel, no, this is an issue which I would solve a bit later. So it's the mixture, how to come into a society, how to listen to people, and how to bring them together with your own visions.
Amazing. And you're also very known for contemporary music and contemporary repertoire. And you mentioned that when you first arrived, many people had huge problems with that in Zurich. So what was your strategy over those first seasons to build trust and to get your audience like truly excited about contemporary repertoire?
You as a musician, you know exactly when you listen to something which is very known and you heard before something which is contemporary, you will make a completely other experience to listen to the same piece before. So my idea always was to open up the ears, giving a chance to everyone to make new experiences with new music, contemporary music, with new ideas, with interdisciplinary ideas of contemporary art, but really giving people the chance to open up the ears. And so we started with creating a new position as a creative chair. It's not a composer in residence. It is really a person who is creative in one way. He or she is a composer, definitely. But normally these people, these musicians or artists should have an interest also in the institution with whom they are collaborating for one season. We started with Esa-Pekka Salonen, for example, and of course we had a new piece of him, and we performed in the season opening this new piece. On the same hand, it was very important that he was there when these new pieces are rehearsed by our orchestra, and he conducted the orchestra as well, and we had talks also about music. So I needed people from the beginning who are very much interested to give their insight of their life as an artist, as a musician, as a composer, as someone who is relevant in the way that he or she speaks a certain language. And this certain musical language is something which we need not to explain in a very educational way. It needs to be done in a very personal way. And I would say an audience must have the opportunity several times during a season to get more and more an idea what the music of this person is behind the scene. What is he or she thinking about the whole music business? Is there something which they really want to point out? And we started with people who were at the beginning really very, very much interested also in discussing all the needs for contemporary music, that we have really not only a discussion about contemporary music, but also the understanding that the way and the value, like a composer nowadays, she or he is the person who is bringing us to some new audiences, to some new limits, to let us experience something which was never heard before. In comparison to the people who are interpreting, I would say that actually the value and the awareness of what a composer is doing is way too low. Yeah, is way too low for the contemporary art in general. And I must say, if you go to a Biennale in Venezia and you see architects, you see art forms, you see actually a huge setup and possibility of interdisciplinary art forms, then music is so important and is so relevant in the way how you perceive things. And if you can really use contemporary music for certain purposes, that I must say the value of the people who are really thinking completely new terms is something which I wanted to be seen in the highest way. And then, of course, you need people who are able to give a not only interesting but convincing interpretation. And everything comes together. But at first, it has to do with the value of doing and creating something new. It has to do with a lot of creativity to find out what it could be. And I started in 2014-15 with my artistic team. And we said we want to really raise this value and give also an audience who is not experienced at all, or maybe a little bit experienced, or some of them, they don't like contemporary music so far. But I can tell you that after 11 years now, the ears are much more open of many people. And we have even people who are asking when the season brochure is out, what are concerts I never would hear before and again live? And so all these questions are very relevant for us. And this changed the mentality. And of course, you have to work on that really continuously and never give up.
Yeah, never give up. That's true. No, I absolutely agree that contemporary composers, classical music composers, are absolutely undervalued and the awareness is so low. And I always notice that contemporary dance, for example, has gained so much attention in compared to music. And music is just like, for some people, Stravinsky is already contemporary. We're talking about that level of awareness. So thank you very much.
We're living in a society where the visual art has a huge advantage, actually. Yes. And of course, the aesthetic of dancers, of even completely contemporary dance, is very high appreciated and valued. And it has to do with all the social media as well, that people are able to show themselves, to present themselves. So the whole feeling of a body, of movement, of everything like that is much more seen. And in comparison to that, is listening to other people, to music, to art, is another quality.
Absolutely. Another layer. Yes. We covered the topic of audiences. So let's talk about your team, so to say. So you have talked about how vital it is to have a great team. How do you know where to draw the line between your own oversight and your guiding your team and the freedom you give them to do their best work? How do you oversee the processes without micromanaging?
Very good question, I must say. Micromanaging is easily done, and way too often, I must say, also in my daily process, done. But at the end, you need to have projects, big projects, where you can let your team do the whole process from the beginning up to the end, to the performance. And then you just step in maybe one day before the performance starts. And we have some of these projects where I totally can rely on other people in our team who are managing at the highest standard these projects. And this is very, very helpful to give the freedom for certain artistic ideas as well. But on the other hand, also for certain projects where you can bring in also younger people in the team who can develop on a certain project and who can experience how far they can go. And then at the end, the question of a debriefing or of getting an honest feedback is very, very important. And this is the next level to accept in the one way and the other way from both parts, what is the next level we want to reach. And these are discussions at the beginning without the question of financial conditions, without the question of the budget, but talking about an artistic idea which can lead us to something different. And also to decide after some years, this idea which we created together is now coming to a natural end. So we have to create something new. And we have so many changes actually in our society. So if we are talking about generations, and is it Generation Z or is it another generation? I don't know. But we have to be very sure that we bring everyone, that we give everyone an access to what we are doing. And we have normally in our teams, in a very normal way, we have the possibility to have so different people, hopefully, that we can reach the different angles and find out how creative we have to be, we can be and what is the next goal. And of course, we need a very good balance with the whole economic situation, and we need to have to understand the budgets and to find out where is a certain way of financing, also with all the support of private sponsors, donators, and so on. Where is the way just realizing it? But at the beginning, the idea of an artistic project has to be so strong that the rest can be done and can be done properly. And if you're then really succeeding with an idea, then you always have to find a way of how you control the result. And the result is an artistic result, is a personal experience which you are having during a concert, during a performance, and has also an impact on the economy.
That leads perfectly to my next question, because I listened to an interview when you said that women, that you encourage them to take jobs that are 2 shoe size too big. But as a senior executive, you are the one taking the risk on them. So how do you create that safety net you have just talked about, like financial aspects, so that people who are less experienced still can try and learn by swimming without making mistakes that could potentially damage institution?
I would say the first thing is you have to make mistakes, and you have to learn from these mistakes that you hopefully are not doing the same mistakes again. But you need to have, and you need to create a culture that a mistake is something which is completely normal at the beginning. But you have to evaluate why this happens and how you can do better. This is the only thing. It sounds very simple, but at the end, it has to do if you are working in a surrounding where this is possible.
Mm-hmm. Your job involves very high stakes negotiations. What's a core principle you always bring to the table? Can you share a story or a time a deal, a very serious deal, was about to fall apart and a specific tactic or change saved it?
Sometimes you have to find compromises. And if you are agreeing on a compromise, you have to be very sure that at the end, the negotiation of this deal is going in that direction where you are convinced that this makes sense. And of course, there are some deals, some negotiations where you can't find a compromise, where you can't find a result, then you have to stop. This sometimes happens with some artistic projects, that you can't find really a certain way of a negotiation where the partners can agree on. And then you have to deal again, or you need another project. So you have different possibilities of that. And at first you try to find a compromise where both parties can agree upon it. And I think this must be the first solution, but you have to have a certain idea where's your limit, which you don't want to reach.
And negotiation, it's very tied to like the whole selling process, yeah? And you have called yourself a salesperson for the orchestra. And I feel like the selling, although very crucial, one of the most important skills that one can learn, can be deeply uncomfortable. What is your mindset when you walk into a meeting to ask for a major sponsorship or donation? How do you turn the conversation from I'm asking you for money into I'm offering you an incredible opportunity?
I think it's always an incredible opportunity when you have the possibility to speak to someone who should support your idea, your orchestra, your artistic project, whatever it is, the whole institution, or maybe an education project as well. The first thing is that you have to be prepared in a very, very good way. With whom are you talking, that you know much more, which is about this person, not only to read, but really that you do a research project before you meet these people. And finding out where are the things they are really interested in. And sometimes it's not their interest in music, not in our institution, but you can find by doing this research a certain angle where you have the feeling you can start. And sometimes you have also a meeting like that where you try to offer a super project and you're totally convinced that you will get money for that, and also high amount of money, hopefully. And you lose completely. And you find out in the first or second meeting, no, there is no way that we can really work together because we have not really the possibility to find a certain way where we are both on the same track. If you find out this, you have to stop immediately, I would say. To find then a compromise is nearly impossible. So I'm convinced that the value of music, of what we are doing, is extremely high. And my only advice is don't underestimate this value. And don't ask for less money because you think then I get at least a little bit, and try to find some other partners financing the same idea. So I learned ask in the way that you give the people with whom you're making negotiations the way that you appreciate their value, that you know exactly what could be the level of the donation of a sponsorship someone could give to you.
And I guess that from your experience now, you can figure out pretty quickly if the negotiation can develop in a positive way or not.
I would say it can be different. Sometimes it takes 2 years.
Oh,
And you
wow.
have meetings, but then after 2 years, it must be the case that you have a deal for the next 4 years. So it's a question, is it something where you have negotiations from one project to another one? Is it someone who's private donator giving you money? It's completely different in comparison to a company, for example, or to people who are supporting your club of friends. So there are different rules. There are different issues you have to think about.
And I have quite a personal question. How do you emotionally detach yourself from, for example, the project that you've been carrying on for 2 years, 3 years, and then eventually something goes wrong and you have to rethink your whole strategy?
I think this is normal, that sometimes you have to rethink your whole strategy for a certain project, and that you have to make a correction in a way that you make it work. And you learn over the years, I would say, that you don't think in this moment in a very emotional way. You have just to think about, no, I'm living now. I want to make it work. And if it's not possible to find a way, then find another idea.
Wow, that's impressive. And talking about your first executive roles, you mentioned that you had to work much harder to be accepted. So can you make that a little bit more tangible? So what did working harder actually look like on a daily basis compared to your male peers? Was it about over-preparing? Yeah.
Yes, it was about preparation. It was about knowing the facts, the figures, the budgets behind the projects, but also knowing the people maybe better than other people with whom I was sitting in a meeting, and be prepared in the best way. And the other thing was being present as much as you can in the concert hall, outside, for other cultural institutions, being seen, being present. You are there. You are someone whom you can talk with, whom you can ask questions, but being present in a city in the way that also other cultural institutions have this feeling you're not only the feeling, but getting really your time, and that they experience you're interested in what they are doing. And so this was much harder, I would say, at the beginning, because I always had the feeling and the imagination that male leader, they just convinced that this is their world. And for me, it was something completely new at that moment, but I made very, very positive experiences because I was supported very much, only from male persons at that time, because there were nearly no women. But I can just say that I feel the preparation and then the way of how to speak, how to announce what you want to do is really very important. And of course, showing if you don't know what to do, yeah, tell them, I need your advice. And my experience after the first steps was tell people also very honestly, if you have no idea how to solve a problem, but finding a way, what are the next steps, and looking for the right people who are helping you to find a solution for a problem. And this could be a lawyer, it could be someone who is really totally experienced in making the best deals, but also someone who is experienced in finding some completely new solutions, very creative solutions, where nobody before thought this could be the way to make it work. So this was a balance between I have my way, I think I have my way, how I would succeed. But on the other hand, realizing, okay, I'm new in that field, I'm new in that business, in that role, in that position, and I have to adapt, I have to learn. And I have to learn very quickly what are the next steps, what are the needs. And trying to find out who are people who are really interested in helping and supporting you. And this is something, if you're quite young, I would say it's much easier in comparison to someone who is, let's say, 50 years old, and you have this feeling, and hopefully I'm now 58, but I learn every day. And there are so many developments in our world, you cannot understand everything immediately. So you have to find out what are the most interesting and impressive, but also important issues and subjects you have to know, and to figure out what is really now something which you have to know more about it immediately, to be in front of your team and to go ahead than in always trying to get the news and the next insights, and you're always then too late. So this has to do how you create an overview. Where is the positioning for an institution? And this you learn from an early age. It's a daily process, really a daily process.
And how has your relationship with power and authority changed from your first directorial role to now?
Maybe you have, the older you are, you have maybe a more natural authority. But anyway, you need power to decide unusual and also things which you don't like so much.
On a more personal note, you described the whole process of being prepared, being there, like showing up for your team, for your audience, and to be there for them. And you have laughed when asked about work-life balance, saying that, this work requires so much passion and so much involvement. And that passion is clearly your driving force. But practically speaking, what are your non-negotiable boundaries that you have set for yourself in order for not getting burnt out?
When I started, I had no idea what is work-life balance. I just wanted to reach what I could reach. And I loved the experience. And I get the energy back from a concert or from a project in the evening, when I see it, when I experience it. I think if there would be one day where I'm sitting in a concert and I'm just getting bored, or I have not anymore the possibility to listen to everything there, which is also type of work. It's not relaxing. It's really getting an insight of what was programmed before. If this happens, then it might be too late on the one hand side. On the other side, I would say, okay, then you really know that you need off time. But I'm not the best example telling people what is work-life balance.
Thank you for this honest answer. Because this is something that also my peers from my university who are already, holding leadership positions, but decided to embark on more formal and academic education, they also struggle with that. They say, I don't know how to lead by example. I don't know what is the limit of, me being present and constantly thinking about the projects I'm developing and just giving myself time off.
Yeah, you have to find your own balance. This is clear. But, my work is also my life in a certain way. I'm living with artists. I'm living with an orchestra. I'm living with friends who are mostly in that part of this artistic world, also very much interested, at least. Not everyone is working in that business, but I try to get insights and to get interesting information from people who are doing also completely other things, who are having research projects with artificial intelligence, who are doing more political research or history research, which is always very, very interesting and helpful to see also our own creative perspectives from a completely other side. And I think these just trying to say this is work, this is life. If you're working in an artistic field, there's a lot of life in your work and the way other run.
Yeah, that's true. You said that during the pandemic, you felt that so many things were going completely wrong in the music industry and that you wanted to change some things. So now that we have some distance, what's the biggest change you successfully made inside Tonhalle because of those reflections?
During the pandemic, for me, it was totally clear that all the questions of how we work with each other, how we discuss all the items regarding sustainability, for example, that we have to take care on that, and that we have to be aware that people even more need a live experience in a concert or in a music theater or in a theater. So these live experience, being together, sitting or standing for a certain time where you are not using normally your digital devices, is a certain quality which I can just say I adore. And after 5 years, of course, sometimes we have nearly forgotten that it was impossible to just attend a concert, to just see what you can produce. But I always have this feeling that right now, due to the whole worldwide political situation we have and the whole really negative images we see every day on our mobile, for example, that we have more than ever the need together with other people and to have this live experience in a concert hall, for example, and to have this possibility to be in an off time in a certain way, in your me time, but also off the space, off the world, let's say for 60 or 90 minutes at least. This is a certain quality which helps a lot for people to finding their own balance, their human balance. And I think we have to point out, and we have really continuously, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about this value, this experience, which is personal. It's a food for your soul. And sometimes these food for your soul is less estimated. And people think, oh, no, it's there. Of course, we have on our mobile device, we have 450 years of music history. And we can listen to it on Spotify, for example, or other platforms. And everything is there. But it makes a huge difference if you are guided in a very good way, in a human way, through a concert, through a dramaturgic red line, hopefully, so that you can experience something which is new for you and which really changes a bit in a certain way for some minutes on a day. It makes your life a little bit better. And with this experience and with this idea, if you can just confirm that it is the same with you, then we need people who are telling this as well as often as they can in different situations, so that people are aware of, if we lose that, if we lose the possibility to enter a concert, and it has nothing to do, actually, I would say, with your financial background, because if you have not the money, we try to give you a very, very cheap ticket, or even we find people who are giving access to you and paying for you the ticket. So it's much more, you have to find the way that you're starting to enter a concert hall and to attend performances, and that you have the feeling it's a human need that people experience things like that, and that they see this beauty, also sometimes brutality in music, but also at the end, the beauty, how sounds can move something which many other art forms can also do. But I think it's the most direct way of changing a bit the whole atmosphere with music. And it's, at the end, it's the only language we are all understanding.
Yes, that's true. And the experience, because I'm also trying to introduce my friends, who have never attended anything live, to just go there, to give it a try. And after the first concert, I mean, be it a symphonic concert or, I don't know, opera even, yeah, because I used to be a vocal coach, they're just, oh my God, it's just whole another world. But
Yeah.
the barrier that still exists, that they still think that it's something very elitist and it's not for them. and the dress code and, all those things. This is literally what stops them.
All these things never should have the highest priority, so that they are giving people the idea, no, I'm not welcomed here. It must be the other way around. Everyone has to have access. Everyone is welcomed in such a beautiful cultural institution. And also this cultural institution anyway makes something with you. Yeah, it's a beauty of a huge room, of a huge space. It's the beauty of decoration, of colors. It's the architecture. If it's done properly, I would say it's one of the nicest experiences you can have together.
It's true. Well, for my last question, I would like to ask you. So your goal is to bring musicians and audiences much closer together. And let's imagine if you hadn't any financial or logistical limits for one project, what's the most radical experiment you would try to implement? What is that one unfulfilled dream format you would love to bring to life?
It's very tricky to answer. I can just say my dream, and I have said this very often, sorry to say that, my dream is not anymore announcing who is playing what and why, but only a date and the starting time of a concert or of a project. And hopefully the people will join us because they trust the special quality which we want to give to them and the experience. So this is my dream. And there are many, many artistic ways to reach that. It's not a single project where I would say I'm dreaming of that. I'm dreaming of people who are trusting that these institutions have not only relevance, but that they are giving them something which changes a bit their life.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible knowledge. That has been a masterclass in leadership. And I wish you all the best and further success with your amazing career.
Thank you. Hope to see you live one day.
One day, hopefully in Zurich at Tonhalle.
All the best also to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have listened to The Art She Manages. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show and leave a positive review on whichever platform you're listening. It really helps more people discover these stories. Feel free to share the episode with someone you think would be inspired by it. Until next time!